queers, faggots, bulldykes, lesbos, muff divers, scumsuckers, pansies, fruitcakes, deviants.
How about that, you white cocksucker?
I'm Rock Hudson, and I'm here to thank every one of you for your wonderful help.
Intraorally or intraanally?
Long-time companions, lifelong bachelor, otherwise engaged. Don't ask, don't tell. Nah, it couldn't be. Isn't he married? I knew it all the time. They're just good friends. He lives with his mother. Rough trade, pink powder puffs. The ladies' sewing circle. A night out with the boys. Chickens. Chicken hawks. Sodom and Gomorrah in sunny California. Homosexuality is one of the oldest traditions of theatrical life, far older than television or movies or recording studios. Gender bending is part of the art of make-believe, the fantasy world we see on the screen and on the stage. In Shakespeare's day, young boys played women's roles with apples for breasts. Drag acts have long been part of the English music hall tradition, and they've always got a good laugh on the American vaudeville stage. For some reason, the world of film, TV, stage, and dance attracts gay men and women in large numbers. Is it because here they can be accepted by their peers instead of sneered at or spat upon? Or is it the need to act out, to assume another character, another life, another persona? Or does it merely seem like there is a preponderance of gays in Hollywood because their work is so visible? The movies, the songs, the dance, the designs, the music.
I'm having trouble with these fat white cocksuckers.
Let him among you who is without sin cast the first stone.
The viewing public sees images on the screen and the stage of actors representing godlike versions of characters larger than life, and it sees the actors themselves as personifications of masculinity and femininity. But these performers are all too human. Sometimes they're frail, nervous, neurotic, or bitchy and angry, or isolated and lonely.
A degenerate.
As much as the public and the press loves building up these idols, it loves tearing them down even more, as if the revelations of someone's sex life, their private preferences, can make these former gods more accessible. Even though homosexuality has been a fact of life in every culture throughout history, it still carries the stigma of the deviant, the pervert. Until very recent times, the private lives of gay men and women in Hollywood have remained very secret. Homosexuality in Hollywood has always been the most taboo secret, of a revelation that stars would go to any length to keep secret.
Oh, yes, I can understand you being so callous with all your experience, but let me tell you, it'll mean ruin to me. Ruin!
Fred, the young rookie who turned...
The accepted Hollywood convention was that the public would never accept a gay actor playing a straight role, that a sex scandal would destroy a career. This may or may not have been true, but there was big money riding on the stars' reputations, millions of dollars, hundreds of jobs, and nobody wanted to take the risk. The classic example is Rock Hudson, one of the last great movie stars in the classic mold. Tall, dark, handsome, athletic, affable, romantic, funny, tender, caring, and queer. He came to Hollywood as Roy Fitzgerald, a ruggedly handsome former mailman with dreams of becoming a star. No formal acting background, but a desire as unshakable as his stage name. Roy Fitzgerald began his movie career as the big, good-looking lug in the background of scenes in pictures like Fighter's Squadron. He only had a couple of lines of dialogue, and doing those terrified him. A flamboyant, waspish, agent took young Fitzgerald under his wing. Henry Wilson. Wilson was known in Hollywood for several things. As a talent agent, he was known for renaming performers with gimmicky names. Julia Turner became Lana Turner. Marilyn Lewis became Rhonda Fleming. Merle Johnson became Troy Donahue. Art Gilleen became Tab Hunter. These very Hollywood monikers branded the performers as Henry Wilson's clients long after they attained stardom or left Wilson's management. Henry Wilson was not handsome, but was very charming. He was also a sexual predator, preying on handsome young men who wanted to become movie stars. Roy Fitzgerald was his greatest creation. He was born Roy Scherer in Illinois. His father disappeared early in his life, and Roy eventually claimed the name of his stepfather, Fitzgerald. Early in his teenage years, he realized he preferred the sexual company of men to women. He kept it quiet. This was the 1940s. Men didn't talk about such things. The name Rock Hudson probably came from Henry Wilson. It sounds like a Wilsonism, but Hudson himself claimed he invented it, sitting around with his friends one afternoon. A movie contract with Universal Studios resulted in the transformation of the awkward young man from Illinois into the movie star Rock Hudson.
He was given lessons in boxing, fencing, horseback riding, and even acting.
The publicity machine linked him with many good-looking women, such as Vera Ellen and Betty Abbott, a relative of Bud Abbott of the team Abbott and Costello. In the loosest sense, Hudson could be called bisexual, as he had relations with women and deep friendships with both sexes. However, his preference was for men. His career as a good-looking star of action pictures was slowly cultivated. In forgettable pictures like I Was a Shoplifter and Tomahawk, through headlining in films like The Lawless Breed and Gun Fury. He starred opposite Jane Wyman in the 1954 remake of The Magnificent Obsession, a tearjerker which had made closet queen Robert Taylor a movie star in 1935. This led to Hudson starring in Giant for Warner Brothers. Along with Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean, the cast included a young Sal Mineo.
Rock Hudson, born to tower over 1 million acres.
That sure is a beautiful animal. Beautiful.
Your money's no good here. Come on, let's go. You too.
Hold on a minute.
He never stood so tall as when he crawled.
Hudson's close and platonic relationship with Elizabeth Taylor lasted the rest of his life, but he didn't get along with James Dean. Though they may have shared similar sexual proclivities, Hudson was too much of a professional to put up with Dean's erratic behaviors.
Just pretty nigh good enough to eat.
Wait a minute. Boy, take it easy.
Oh, you Tessie, Vic. Tessie is no cook.
The part in Giant was the best of Rock Hudson's career to that point, but things were getting grim in private life. He had set up housekeeping with Phyllis Gates, rumored to be bisexual, though she denied it years later. Fan magazines were wondering in print why Rock Hudson was 30 years old and unmarried, but the most ominous problem on the horizon was Confidential magazine, a publication that made the National Enquirer look conservative by comparison. Publisher Robert Harrison and columnist Howard Rushmore would do anything to sell magazines. Up to this point, Rock Hudson had been a minor player at Universal. Now he was a star, and fair game.
Hudson's homosexual indiscretions were found out by one of Confidential magazine's many stringers and investigators. but his agent, Henry Wilson, wanted to make sure Rock's hands were clean, at least publicly. A marriage was encouraged, and Rock married Nancy. One of the few guests was Henry Wilson, Rock's agent. In later years, Hudson told some of his intimate friends that there were only two people in his life that he really loved. His wife Nancy was one of them. She was pretty and bright and served as a good companion to Rock in public occasions, like meeting the ambassador of Korea. Unbeknownst to his wife, Rock continued his homosexual liaisons. The few times Nancy voiced any suspicions about his absences, he smacked her. Rock's agent, Henry Wilson, began to grow complacent about his best-known creation. When Rock went to Italy to shoot a picture, he had a short-lived but intense affair with a good-looking Italian actor. Wilson learned about this and made sure the papers didn't get wind of it. But after Rock returned from his trip to Rome, with the young Italian actor close behind him, both Rock and Henry Wilson realized something had to be done to throw the dogs of Confidential off the track. Various versions of this tale have been told over the years. One is that Rory Calhoun, another one of Henry Wilson's clients, became the scapegoat. Confidential magazine somehow came into the information that Rory Calhoun, under his real name, Francis McCowan, had been in trouble with the law off and on in his late teens and early 20s. The story was believable, but there is another variation, that the secret Wilson gave to Confidential was not Calhoun's crime record, but that actor George Nader was offered up as the sacrificial lamb. Nader was a lifelong friend of Rock Hudson and was dropped by Hudson's studio, Universal, shortly thereafter. Yet another variation is that Rock Hudson's career was saved by the sacrifice of Tab Hunter, one more client of Henry Wilson. Hudson was a bigger star and earned more money for the studio and for Wilson. But a fourth explanation, offered by Hudson's wife Nancy in her book, Rock Hudson, My Husband, is even more ominous. Hired gangsters.
May I help you?
Yes. You just look inside the briefcase. It'll explain everything.
I don't understand. But you can't.
I can, and I will. And you and some others are going to die if you don't do exactly as I say.
You're crazy.
And you're getting awful close to being dead.
Confidential never hinted at Hudson's homosexuality. He went on to star in romantic comedies with Doris Day.
Look, I don't know what's bothering you, but don't take your bedroom problems out on me. Are you getting out of that bed, or am I coming in after you?
You wouldn't dare.
A series of fluffy, lightweight sex comedies with Doris Day and later Gina Lola Brigida reestablished Rock Hudson as a top-flight star.
But why?
Ye gods, you've got cold feet. Complaints, complaints, nothing but complaints. I could complain a little too, you know. You ever cut your toenails?
Extremely private, even through the 60s and 70s, during the period of so-called gay liberation. His taste was for tall, good-looking, light-haired men like Tom Clark, who maintained a close relationship with Hudson for more than a decade, and Mark Christian, who grew close to Hudson in the last years of his life. Hudson's homosexuality was well known in the entertainment community. The idea never seemed to occur to outsiders until the early 1970s, when a couple of gay pranksters sent out invitations to a wedding between Rock Hudson and singer-comedian Jim Nabors, TV's Gomer Pyle. Something that started as a campy little gag between a couple of gay blades became an element that destroyed a friendship. Still absolutely closeted about his sexuality, Rock Hudson crossed Jim Nabors off his friendship list so that the gossip would cease. But the marriage story became part of urban myth. Everyone knew someone who knew someone who knew someone else who had been at the wedding of the country western comedian and the movie star leading man. The wedding had supposedly taken place in Hawaii, or Minnesota, or Illinois, or Kentucky, or Beverly Hills. In fact, it never took place at all, except in the imagination of a couple of gay boys who thought they were having a fun time. When his box office drawing power began to wane in the 1970s, Hudson turned to television, successfully starring in Macmillan and Wife, a mystery comedy series with Susan St. James. As he approached 50, he began to change his habits as well. He smoked and drank incessantly, and even began frequenting gay bars and bathhouses in San Francisco. He suffered a severe heart attack in 1981. Blood transfusions given to him at the time may have given him the AIDS virus. It may have been contracted from his sexual lifestyle. There is no way to tell. He kept this deadly secret from everyone except his friends George Nader and Mark Miller. Even Mark Christian, a young so-called writer who had hustled his way into Hudson's affection, was kept in the dark about this disease. A large unsightly tumor on his neck was diagnosed as Kaposi's sarcoma, a common parasitical disease associated with acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Hudson wasted away for more than 2 years, flying to France in the vain hope that doctors there could somehow cure AIDS. The disease devastated the formerly good-looking actor. His cheeks went hollow, his hair thinned. His weight dropped from more than 200 pounds to less than 140. The public announcement that Rock Hudson not only had AIDS, but was homosexual, brought a reaction that even Rock Hudson could not believe. He got more fan letters and publicity in the wake of that announcement than he did in 30 years as an actor in 62 films. To some, he was a hero who put a face on a previously anonymous disease. To others, he was less than a hero, having unprotected sex with an unending series of young men in this West Hollywood apartment, long after he knew he was infected with AIDS. After Hudson's death, ex-lover Mark Christian successfully sued the estate for millions of dollars, claiming Hudson had put him at risk by exposing him to the deadly disease, although blood tests showed Christian was HIV negative.
We talked about how we met, and he was reminiscing and wished me happy birthday. And he put his arm around me and he said, "You know, I love you, and I would never do anything to hurt you."
Prosecutors painted Christian as a male hustler who had threatened to reveal Hudson's homosexuality to the supermarket tabloids.
I might add that Rock was not a wimp, and if I had tried anything like that, he would have kicked my ass right down the stairs.
If you were to bring in a verdict that's a slap on the wrist for a man like Miller, it's not going to be much of a story, and the message isn't going to go anywhere. They're not going to carry it. It's nothing. But if you bring in a verdict, once again, like the one you brought in yesterday, you can know that the whole world is going to take notice of it.
And the whole world did take notice of the verdict, the trial, and the death of Rock Hudson. Dismissed at first as beefcake, and then as someone capable only of romantic fluff, he proved to the world that he was a good actor. This intensely insecure and private gay man portrayed the role of a strong heterosexual movie star, and he did it magnificently.
Let me make this crystal clear. I have a wife and daughter. I was married once before, and I raised a son. And I'm as proud of my sexual preference as those who happen to be gay are of theirs. And there is not a man who has lived on the face of this earth in my lifetime who can truthfully deny what is so obviously my choice. That is that I am singularly heterosexual.
TV star Tom Selleck went to great lengths to deny rumors of his homosexuality as published in the supermarket tabloid, The Globe. But The Globe itself was only reporting on posters that had appeared throughout New York outing supposedly homosexual celebrities. Radical queers feel that the more homosexuals who come out of the closet, the faster society will accept gay life. That, at least, is the theory. In practice, all this seems to do is embarrass people who'd rather keep their sex habits private. And radical queers often use the same tactics of innuendo and rumor that straight gossip mongers have used against gays and lesbians. They'll assume that a certain celebrity is gay because they heard it from someone who was on the inside with someone else who talked to someone else, etc., etc. Outing these allegedly gay men
and women has overtones of bitchy jealousness. People will talk, whether there's any truth to the rumor or not. And the most frustrating subject of gossip is one who refuses to be public at all. Greta Garbo was the queen of non-publicity, a human sphinx, and her hermaphroditic appeal made her demand for privacy even more maddening. Fellow MGM star Joan Crawford said, "If there was ever a reason for me to become a lesbian, it was seeing Greta Garbo for the first time." Throughout her life, her choice of male companions was very interesting. The bizarrely artistic conductor Leopold Stokowski, Sir Cecil Beaton, the longtime bachelor and official photographer to the royal family in Great Britain, film and stage director Ruben Mamoulian, odd nutrition expert Gaylord Hauser, and her original mentor, Moritz Stiller. After her retirement in 1941, she stayed not only by herself, but very often in the company of gay women and men. They gave her the one thing that she demanded from her lovers, to be left alone. Because of the association in the public mind between AIDS and homosexuality, many people assumed actor Ray Sharkey to be gay. It wasn't the truth. He was heterosexual, flamboyantly so, and a junkie. He caught AIDS from shooting heroin and cocaine, and passed AIDS on to his girlfriend, model Elena Monica.
I felt horrified, I felt betrayed, I never felt so destitute in my entire life.
Elena Monica wasn't the only person to suffer. Sharkey's wife of 3 years, Carol, was separated from him when he learned he had the AIDS virus. He had spent all the money he earned in his career on cocaine, heroin, and other women.
I love Ray. We were fine.
Sharkey blamed his stupid decisions on his childhood.
In the inner city, in lower income neighborhoods, you drink, you do drugs at a certain age, you become successful. In my case, it took me a few years to become successful, and the information that I had was twofold. Well, okay, now what do I do that I got all I wanted? Let's party! Let's rip it up!
Few people partied harder than Ray Sharkey, star of movies like The Idolmaker and TV's Wise Guy. Fewer still had much sympathy for a man who continues to have unprotected sex with people, knowing that he's carrying the HIV virus. Even straight society found it easier to sympathize with gay men who were stricken by AIDS, such as Robert Reed. Reed was best known as the father on The Brady Bunch, a series that he loathed and called brainless. He was much prouder of his earlier work, such as co-starring with E.G. Marshall in The Defenders, one of the best dramatic shows of the early 60s. It tackled subjects such as homosexuality, cross-dressing, fascism, censorship, abnormal psychology, and social pressure. The shows dealt with heavy dramatic themes, but as these outtakes show, life on the set wasn't all that serious.
What? I think I can delay in this town. Get the fuck out of my way.
Ain't you early, Warden? I don't go until 5. Oh, fuck it.
Hope you get laid. I wouldn't be surprised if Governor White turned out to be the best bet we have.
Well, what makes you think an acting governor would be any more lenient than an actual governor?
Lack of experience and Are you having trouble?
Well, I can't seem to get it open.
Perhaps you underestimate them, Doctor. Why do you drink so heavily, Abe? Did you bring the juice, Abe? I'm having trouble with Lee, that white cocksucker.
Brechen Sie das Stuckenfaden stinken thing there.
Das Gefühl, dass uns durch ein Mikro
Mikroskop angesehen hat. Nicht wahr, Papa?
Du hast es gesagt, mein Sohn. How did you receive such instruction? Intraorally or intraanally? Intraorally or intraanally? Go fuck yourself. No, I'm going to bed with Dottie tonight. Let's go to bed.
I've got to find him. Where is he now?
He's dead.
Oh, shit.
How about that, you white cocksucker?
Hollywood tried to sell him as the sensitive boy next door, but there was always something that seemed a little off-center about Anthony Perkins. Even when trying to play tough opposite Sevilla Loren, he came off weak and neurotic. Perkins never knew his father, a character actor named Osgood Perkins, and in later years revealed that he had studied these old movies of his father to try to figure out who his father was and who he was. His greatest success was as the mother-fixated maniac in Hitchcock's Psycho, and he fought against such typecasting for decades. He tried psychoanalysis, drugs like LSD and marijuana, drinking, and sex. To the surprise of many of his friends, he finally married and had children. He came to accept the kinship between himself and his cinema creation, the tormented Norman Bates, whom he played in 3 additional films. With his wife, Berinthia Berenson, children, and loved ones nearby, Tony Perkins died from AIDS-related diseases at the age of 60, with a dignity and a sense of peace that was never granted his greatest dramatic creation. Cary Grant was born with the unromantic name Archibald Alexander Leach to a poverty-stricken family in Bristol, England. There was no way to go but up for the young Archie Leach, and he ran away from home to join a theater troupe, becoming a juggler, acrobat, and song and dance man. When he moved to New York, he applied his athletic physique to Coney Island swimmers as a lifeguard, and Archie Leach reinvented himself. He modified his lower-class accent by listening to records and performers like Noel Coward, and created a persona for himself in the same way other stage performers did. Archie Leach became the incredibly handsome and assured leading man, Cary Grant. But the underlying foundations of that persona were tenuous. Archie Leach knew that he wasn't Cary Grant. He grew intensely private, often hanging out in Palm Springs at the Racket Club run by Charlie Farrell. Fellow entertainers accepted Cary Grant for who he was, Archie Leach, not the too perfect screen image that he projected. The reputation of homosexuality in British actors preceded him, and as early as 1932, snide, hand-drawn comic books insinuated that Cary Grant preferred men. When he moved to Hollywood in the early 30s, he got a low-paying contract at Paramount Pictures, but he was spotted by Mae West, who gave Cary Grant his first big co-starring role in her film She Done Him Wrong in 1933. It was in fact Cary Grant to whom Mae West said, "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?" Mae West herself was dogged by weird sexual rumors over the years. She had written and directed a play called Drag in 1927 about the homosexual life, and her on-screen and on-stage persona appeared to be a parody of wanton femininity. Therefore, went the rumor, she must be a transvestite, a man pretending to be a woman like Mae West. It wasn't true. Her studio, Paramount, like any studio, kept tight rein on their contract players and publicized their private life for an adoring public. But in the case of Cary Grant and Randolph Scott, the publicity backfired. The two actors shared a beach house together, and photos and films of Grant and Scott cavorting together have, in retrospect, the air of campy fun about them. Naturally, the gay community took these hints to heart. No two good-looking, well-dressed men could possibly share the same house and not be lovers. Grant and Scott were certainly not the only unmarried men to share expenses. David Niven and Errol Flynn shared a home that was a heterosexual Grand Central Station. But Cary Grant's smoothness, his handsome face and build, and self-created accent made him a likely target for gossip. He was English, good-looking, and an actor, and he lived with a guy. Therefore, he was a fag. 4 marriages didn't stop the gossip. Virginia Cherrill in 1933, heiress Barbara Hutton in 1942, actress Betsy Drake in 1949, and actress Diane Cannon in 1965. Even if Archie Leach wasn't confident about being Cary Grant, Cary Grant himself seemed confident enough about his sexual image to spoof it on screen several times.
I don't believe you, Susan.
But you have to believe me.
I've been a victim of your unbridled imagination once more.
No, but if you'd only wait while I explain, I just gave you my picture.
No, look, I'm just trying to tell you that you've taught...
Oh, no, I didn't. Why, if you hadn't been in such a hurry and had waited for my explanation,
coat.
your coat would still be perfectly all right.
'Man's going to call on the wishes. Go with there, Carthy. Come on, come on, stop. Come on, hold on. Lock him up. Hey, let go.
Hello, Golgothy.
Oh, Miss Susan, how did you get here?
Influence.
Don't worry, Golgothy. I'll get you out.
Oh, sure. Look, she got me out.
But why are you wearing these clothes?
Because I just went gay all of a sudden.
That he was on the point of having a nervous breakdown. Does he want to wear those clothes?
No, I don't want to wear this thing. I just want to get married.
So I forbid it. Listen to me for 1 minute, and then I'm talking at the same time. Oh, no, please, listen to me. Don't.
What?
Exactly, baby. Don't talk so much.
10 years later, again for director Howard Hawks, Cary Grant spent half the film in drag in the post-war comedy I Was a Male War Bride.
Do you want to try again?
Do you?
Yes.
Yes.
Grant remained a leading man into his 60s, but nothing seemed to kill the persistent rumor of his secret gay life, not even a passionate love affair with Sophia Loren. Intensely private and insecure about his real self, Grant took LSD therapy in the 1960s to try to figure out who was real, the original Archie Leach from Bristol, or Cary Grant, a Hollywood movie star. Perhaps he found the answers. In any case, he made major changes in his life. He married Diane Cannon and fathered his only child, Jennifer, then retired from the screen after a character role in Walk, Don't Run. An acrimonious divorce followed, but Cannon never accused her husband publicly of preferring men. He married Barbara Harris, a marriage that lasted until his death, and subsequently, several women came forward to say that they too spent time in Cary Grant's bed. The only so-called documentation of Grant's homosexuality stems from a suspect biography by Charles Hyam, which dredged up all the old Randolph Scott Cary Grant stories and quoted hundreds of people out of context to fit Charles Hyam's world view of Hollywood. And 2 years before Grant died, comedian Chevy Chase made an off-the-cuff slur at Grant, along with a limp-wristed motion. Grant sued, demanded a retraction and an apology, and got it from the sheepish Chase. Simply because Grant sued over the accusation of homosexuality does not prove that he wasn't. But so far, only gossipy writers have made the allegation publicly. and that may be simply wish fulfillment on their part. Cary Grant was good-looking, charming, and a gentleman all his life. And a gentleman never tells. And the only proof that he swung both ways was on the tennis court. Jealousy of the well-paid, good-looking leading men undoubtedly was a factor in spreading gay gossip about Hollywood leading men such as Cary Grant, Clark Gable, and Errol Flynn. But the life of a movie star inspired a sybaritic lifestyle, and nobody represented the great god Pan better than Errol Flynn. He married several times and fathered several children, but that was hardly an indication of him being sexually conservative. Among his publicly admitted kinks was dabbling in cocaine and morphine, drinking to excess, and having a home on Mulholland Drive with a two-way mirror so that he could observe guests coupling in the other room. Voyeurism and exhibitionism were two of the Australian actor's favorite pastimes. He loved sex in all forms. Though Flynn played in every sort of movie in his 25-year career in Hollywood, dramas, westerns, war films, and comedies, he was best known for his costume pictures: Captain Blood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Adventures of Don Juan, Crossed Swords. Because of his good looks and obvious masculine energy, he became a darling of gay audiences as well as straight audiences. Maybe it was because he was one of the few actors who really looked good in tights.
World against us, and us against the world. Those of you in favor of these articles, raise your right hands and say aye!
Wait! You'll not take her while I live.
Then I'll take her when you're dead.
Oh, shut up with that. What is a girl, more or less?
Obviously, pirate movies were meant for public consumption, and Hollywood always cleaned their history up. But the pirates of the high seas were, in fact, very often gay. Buccaneers wore earrings long before it became trendy, chic, and fashionable. Latter-day gay movie buffs point out that Flynn's role as Don Juan underlines a latent homosexuality, that men who compulsively seduce and conquer women, like Flynn and the historic Don Juan himself, are actually sublimating their hatred of women and their desire for men. This is called the Don Juan syndrome. Most people just thought the movie was a terrific swashbuckler.
Spain in her golden era, basking in pomp and pageantry, when great legions brought her glory to one half of the world, and a fabulous adventurer brought her romance to the other half, when power-mad men sought to inflict their wills on the weak King Philip, and a lonely queen sought guidance to lead her people. When one man rallied a band of loyal followers to defy the conspirators, Don Juan, deadliest swordsman in all Europe, fighting his way into the strongholds of the oppressor and out of the dungeons of the Inquisitor, challenging the tyranny of the cruel Duke of Lorca wherever he finds it, as he gives his sword to his country and his heart to his queen.
All my life, I seem to have been stumbling around as if in darkness. I am no longer...
Silence! You have no right to speak to me that way. I forbid you.
But I would never have spoken except by your command.
Then I was wrong to command you. Wrong to believe that friendship and loyalty could ever replace your desire for another conquest.
Tell me, Don Juan, do you hire men to spread the tales of your romantic conquests?
Some men prefer the conquest of beauty to the conquest of a throne.
I asked you that when I was queen, but I am no longer.
And I shall be the only one to know that for just a little while, there was no queen.
I warned you, senor. This time I shall cut deeply.
Be sure it's deep enough.
Flynn's cheerfully dissolute lifestyle aged him prematurely. He died in 1959, looking a decade older than his 50 years. But after he was long dead and unable to speak for himself, writer Charles Hyam penned a supposed expose of Flynn, branding him as a Nazi spy, and stating unequivocally that the Australian actor had sexual trysts with Howard Hughes, Truman Capote, and assorted others. Hyam also stated that Flynn's yacht, the Zaka, was in fact a Flynn queer joke. The flag for the Zaka had a rooster crowing, which became, in Hyam's imagination, a rebus, a visual word puzzle. The rooster obviously meant cock, Zaka obviously meant sucker. Therefore, Flynn's yacht was really named the Cocksucker. Nearly all of the people whose quotes were attributed in Hyam's book later angrily denied they had said anything of the sort about Flynn's sexuality or his supposed Nazi links. One of the most flamboyantly fantastic claims Hyam makes was a sexual liaison between Flynn and matinee idol Tyrone Power. Rumors of Tyrone Power's bisexuality circulated for years during his lifetime and afterward. Despite his marriages to Annabella in the 40s and Linda Christian later in his life, Power kept his options open. One of the most outlandish and unverified rumors circulating around Tyrone Power's lifestyle was his fondness for coprolagnia. Like many of the more ultra-gay rumors about celebrities, this sounds more like bitchy barroom gossip than gospel. Others who have been smeared by the coprolagnia rumor include Raymond Burr, Danny Thomas, and a female musical comedy star nicknamed the Fudge Cake Queen for her peculiar tastes. But Tyrone Power's bisexual nature was more than snide rumor.
I don't suppose you'd care to dance. Bless me, is that another American custom? Sandy?
Actress Elsa Lanchester's autobiography revealed that her husband, Charles Lawton, was infatuated with Power, with whom he starred in Witness for the Prosecution. Lanchester learned that her husband was that way after having been married several years. Returning to their Hollywood home one afternoon, she found Charles and a young man playing hide the salami on her favorite couch. She requested that they throw the couch away, and Charles politely agreed to do so. The sight shocked Lanchester into psychosomatic deafness and muteness for several weeks. She finally came to accept Lawton's homosexuality by simply ignoring it. Lawton was one of the greatest character actors ever to work in Hollywood. His self-loathing martinet, Captain Bligh, in the original Mutiny on the Bounty, is a classic of the cinema.
Hanging from the highest yardarm in the British fleet!
The RKO production of Hunchback of Notre Dame was every bit the equal of Lon Chaney's original silent version. Quasimodo, like Lawton himself, was painfully aware of his own physical imperfections. Lawton could be painfully cruel and thoughtless to those close to him, as he was occasionally to Elsa Lanchester. This too is reflected in his work, such as Salome, made in 1953. Lawton was a multifaceted performer. He could play sly, humorous, vicious, abrupt, clever, befuddled, tender. And more often than not, all of those qualities came off in a given role. In the private life of Henry VIII, he and wife Elsa Lanchester showed a chemistry that obviously went beyond sex.
I fear you had a bad crossing.
Yes, the wind met the sea, met a trouble, and... Oh,
Be pleased to accept my most humble apologies.
oh, but it is not your fault for channel chopping.
Nevertheless, I deeply regret any inconvenience you may have been caused.
Oh, please, it is only that the waves come so high upstairs.
Quite. Our channel can be very rough. Well, it isn't smooth.
Oh, it did.
Permit me to express the hope that a short rest will restore you to health, madam.
Thank you. I hope soon I shall eat again, yes?
By all means. You have our permission to withdraw.
Please?
you're married.
Marriages in name only were common in Hollywood to disguise the sexual tastes of the husband and wife. One obvious example is the marriage of silent screen star Janet Gaynor to Adrian, who was a costume designer for MGM and later Universal Pictures. Such a useful mutual arrangement seldom resulted in children, but it kept tongues from wagging. Gaynor's co-star in a number of classic and now forgotten silent films was Charles Farrell. Good-looking in his youth, Farrell moved to Palm Springs and opened the Racket Club, a celebrity hangout for all sexual persuasions. In the 1950s, he returned to the public eye as the giddy father in My Little Margie with Gail Storm. Some gay actors refused to go along with this. Cesar Romero, for example, was known for years as the most eligible bachelor in Hollywood, always on the arm of an available star who needed an escort, such as Carmen Miranda, who obviously needed a pair of underpants as well. Cesar Romero, known as Butch to his friends, played the gay caballero Cisco Kid in a series of films in the 40s, and became known to an entire new generation as the Joker on the TV series Batman, one of the camp classics of the 1960s. Fans never questioned the fact that the good-looking Butch never married. In his cups, Romero was known to grab the passing asses of good-looking young busboys. But in public, he was always the gentleman. Other gay men in Hollywood refused to go along with the plan entirely. David Manners, an English actor who played the romantic leads in the early horror pictures Dracula and The Mummy, was given an ultimatum by his studio and the gossip mongers in town: get married or get out of town. Manners refused to compromise his integrity and got out of town, opening a dude ranch in the Southwest and turning his back on Hollywood. Likewise, Rock Hudson's best friend, George Nader, left Hollywood rather than to compromise his sexuality. Nader was given the opportunity to marry a woman who would have covered for him, but he chose instead to move to Europe and continue his career unabated in international films shot in Germany and Spain. He also authored several adventure and mystery novels, all with homoerotic themes.
My mother and sister. Bet you'd like her.
No doubt.
Some character actors deliberately courted an eccentric image. As a result, few questioned their sexual preference. It was fairly apparent. Edward Everett Horton, Roly-Poly Grady Sutton, and Franklin Pangborn, for whom the word prissy seems to have been invented.
Discovers new starlet, a Cinderella of the Rockies. Her name is Vicki Lester. Those who have peeked tell me she couldn't be more divoon. The face of an angel and such natural talents. Her voice is a symphony. Her very walk, they tell me, is enough to drive men mad.
Few screen presences were as bitchy, supercilious, and waspish as Clifton Webb. He had been primarily a dancer since his teenage years, although he dabbled in silent films. He was a leading ballroom dancer in New York, often partnered with Bonnie Glass. When Clifton left the act to go on to the musical comedy stage, his place was taken by a young Italian immigrant named Rudolph Valentino. Otto Preminger cast Webb in Laura in 1944 over the objections of 20th Century Fox studio boss Darryl Zanuck. But Webb was perfect for the role of the fastidious, elegant villain and was nominated for an Academy Award.
You're Laura Hunt, aren't you?
Yes.
I'm Shelby Carpenter. Want to dance?
I'm not alone.
Oh, you poor girl. I bet he still does the polka.
Yes, Betsy Ross taught it to me.
It was as
Webb
natural
lived with
for
his
Laura
mother,
to be
who
picked
hovered
up
over him
among
like a hawk.
thousands of alluring girls as it was for her to be surrounded by luxury, mystery, and scheming men.
Under the direction of Otto Preminger, Dana Andrews' interrogation of Webb seemed more like a seduction. Andrews ended up spending several drunken nights on Clifton's couch.
Don't worry. I told you I'd bring in the killer today. Yeah, I was just going to make the arrest when you called. No, I can't tell you now. I'm not alone. You'll see when I come in.
Clifton Webb's mother finally scolded Andrews for tempting her son, and the heterosexual Andrews got the hint. He passed out at home. Clifton Webb's acerbic personality typecast him in waspish roles, though he did actually play a romantic lead opposite Barbara Stanwyck in Titanic. More typical was his male nanny, Mr. Belvedere, in Sitting Pretty and its two sequels.
Keep your seats, please, and kindly refrain from rustling your popcorn bags while I say a few words about a comedy which has recently been produced by the 20th Century Fox Studios. It is titled Sitting Pretty. My submerged vanity will not allow me to say that Sitting Pretty is a good picture. It is not a good picture, it is a great picture. The critics insist that my presence in the cast as a baby-hating babysitter elevates this cinema epic from mediocrity to sublimity. Here you see Robert Young, who plays the role of a harassed father. And this is a close-up of Maureen O'Hara, whose beauty enhances every picture in which she appears. I regret to inform you that in Sitting Pretty, I do not get Miss O'Hara. And now the screen is graced with a close-up of me. No amount of genius will make me a Casanova or a Tyrone Power. But as Belvedere, the babysitter, I do have my triumphs, especially over these three potential assassins and their parents. Mr. King. I've been trying to teach Rory that bathing is not a social function. Kindly do not talk to him.
Mr. Belvedere, you dance divinely.
Yes, I do.
What's the matter? You forget something?
I can't go.
Why?
Well, I can't leave you here alone with Belvedere.
Why not? Belvedere?
Now eat your breakfast and chew each mouthful 28 times. Not 20, mind you, or 26, but 28 times.
What's the matter? What happened?
Why, Roddy!
I guarantee that he will never throw cereal at me or anyone else again, ever. Take my word for it. Sitting Pretty is solid entertainment beamed right at your risibilities. It was made strictly for laughs, with laughs. It was my good fortune to be cast in it. It will be your good fortune to see and enjoy it. Yours very truly, Clifton Webb.
Webb died a few years after his mother in 1966 at the age of 75. According to gay psychic Kenny Kingston, Clifton's ghost still roams Hollywood, as waspish and amusing as when he was alive. Across town at Warner Brothers, Monty Woolley was Clifton Webb's opposite number. Professorial and sardonic, Woolley starred in The Man Who Came to Dinner, the Kaufman and Hart play based on the real-life personalities of critic Alexander Woolcott, actor Noel Coward, and Harpo Marx. Woolley starred as himself in Night and Day, a supposed biography of Cole Porter, with Cary Grant playing the elegant songwriter. Cole Porter probably got a kick out of the pairing of his real friend Monty Woolley and his screen image, Cary Grant. According to Hollywood legend, Monty Woolley liked to pick up young men on Sunset Boulevard by asking them to help take his groceries home. He pulled this gag on a young Robert Mitchum, who took Woolley's groceries up to his house. Woolley then offered him an extra $20 to perform what the police would call a lewd and lascivious act. Mitchum decided he didn't need the $20 that badly, and continued his burgeoning screen career, including a role in a film called We've Never Been Licked. Mitchum's cool reaction was the exception to the rule. Homophobia was as rampant then as now. Gay men rarely reported attacks to police. After all, it was just some fairy getting punched. Conservative Bible thumpers classified homosexuality as an abomination, quoting an injunction in Leviticus. But the same chapter classifies eating seafood without fins as equally dirty. Therefore, anal sex is the biblical equivalent of a shrimp cocktail. But right-wingers are very selective when it comes to biblical quotations.
A deep-felt belief that it is morally wrong, that it is socially ruinous, that it is medically destructive.
Male and female reputations may be scorched or smirched before the investigation is over. Dope fiends will figure in the tale, as well as strange, effeminate men and peculiarly masculine women. All Hollywood is being raked over, and all queer meeting places of movie actors and directors, such as dens where men and women sit in circles drinking curious drinks, are being investigated. News of the World, 1922. That bygone, supposedly innocent era produced some of the biggest scandals in Hollywood history. The sad story of Ramon Navarro stretched from the days of silent pictures into the swinging 60s for its grisly climax. Navarro was a Valentino clone in the silent era. His greatest triumph was co-starring in the original MGM production of Ben-Hur. He had a terrific physique and smoldering sexuality, but his accent and his acting style limited him after Talking Pictures came in. Navarro spent a great deal of time traveling back and forth to Mexico, where he acted, directed, and wrote motion pictures in Spanish. He settled back in the Hollywood Hills in his home and was known in the gay community as someone who was generous to young men. Two Chicago street punks, Ralph and Tom Ferguson, learned of this old man's supposed generosity, sought him out, and went up to the house looking for a stash of cash he supposedly had in the house. They couldn't find it because it never existed, so they beat the old man to death. They later claimed they killed him because he had made a pass at them. They didn't want the world to think they were queer or something. One tale, repeated often in books like Hollywood Babylon, is that Navarro choked to death on a black Art Deco dildo given to him by his friend Rudolph Valentino. Like many tales in Kenneth Anger's exaggerated book, this story was untrue. Murder is bad enough without trying to make a grotesque comic book out of it. Although the Ferguson brothers were tried and brought to justice, the killer of film director William Desmond Taylor was never identified because the mystery of his murder has remained officially unsolved for nearly 70 years. The Irish-born actor-director was the toast of Hollywood in the late teens and early 20s and seemed poised to become one of Tinseltown's stellar talents. But in February 1922, he was shot in the back in his modest Los Angeles bungalow, and a massive cover-up began. His contemporary, King Vidor, investigated the murder in the 1960s, looking for a comeback property for himself. What Vidor found was a classic Hollywood Gothic story. According to Vidor's investigation, Taylor was murdered by Charlotte Selby, the madly possessive mother of silent screen virgin Mary Miles Minter, and that Selby shot Taylor not because he was making love to her daughter, but because Mary was in love with a man who could never love her in return, a man who loved men. Selby did spend thousands of dollars paying off the corrupt district attorney and police, and studio flats planted bogus evidence that supposedly showed Taylor to be a ladies' man. From their efforts, Taylor's skeleton was kept hidden, not in a closet, but in a crypt at Forest Lawn Cemetery. The Los Angeles police file on Taylor will always be marked unsolved. The silent era's greatest romantic star was Rudolph Valentino. But despite his screen image, gossip branded him as a homosexual who hid behind the skirts of dominant lesbians, like the Russian actress Alla Nazimova, who had starred and choreographed in a film version of the Oscar Wilde play Salome with an all-gay cast. The screen chic fell under the spell of a woman named Winifred Shaughnessy, who changed her name to the more pretentious Natasha Rambova. Rambova nearly ruined Valentino's career by overseeing the productions and putting him into frilly costumes and powdered wigs. This may have appealed to some of the feminine members of the audience, but it alienated male moviegoers. Her supposed guidance of Rudy's career also alienated studio bosses. The Valentino screen image became more and more effeminate under Rambova's pretentious guidance. Valentino and Natasha Rambova undertook a nationwide dance tour to packed houses. Valentino had been a dancer before coming to Hollywood, but off the dance floor, Natasha seemed far more interested in furthering her own career and hanging out with her girlfriends than being a wife to the biggest screen idol of the silent era. To add to his troubles, Valentino was briefly arrested for bigamy for having married Rambova before his divorce from his previous wife, Jean Acker, was finalized. Rambova's destruction of Rudolph Valentino's career was nearly complete, but he came back in 2 action films, The Eagle and Son of the Sheik, and had a torrid love affair with silent screen actress Pola Negri. But a strongly worded editorial in the Chicago Tribune held Valentino up to ridicule. When will we be rid of all these effeminate youths, pomaded, powdered, bejeweled, and bedizened, in the image of that painted pansy. A few months later, Rudolph Valentino lay dead at the age of 31. His funeral in New York caused a near riot among his female fans. But among male audiences, fag jokes abounded. Queer baiting was always good for a cheap laugh.
Say, pardon me, I want you to be a nice boy. When you're a nice boy, your fairy godmother always watches over you.
You what?
Your fairy godmother always watches over you.
I got an uncle I'm not sure of.
None of that.
This film comedy, The Soilers, made by a pre-Laurel and Hardy Stan Laurel, uses an effeminate cowboy for the usual gag effect. Camp humor can be a double-edged sword. It affirms stereotypes, but it can also be used as a political tool. Singer Anita Bryant's anti-gay crusade in Dade County, Florida, was a particularly harsh one, full of biblical condemnations and holier-than-thou press conferences. A gang of gay activists used slapstick to drive home a point.
Well, at least it's a fruit pie.
But gay self-spoofing reinforces stereotypes even stronger than straight gags, as in this TV commercial outtake for Monroe shock absorbers.
Sometimes standard shock absorbers aren't enough. That's why Monroe makes these big goodies. Now, anytime you have to carry something heavy like a big old fat trick you might have picked up when you were just horny at night and couldn't get lucky, well, you just took your air hose and put it up as woo-woo and made him just puff out even more. Now you could just stick it here and just go, oh my goodness, is that heaven? Is that a fun goodie? Take that home and your missus will just forget about everything. I tell you, I had one of these at home, I can't tell how many years ago. I had it at home and just to sit on it every night and it just lifted me up to the sky and I'd shriek with delight. It was heaven. Just my air hose and my Monroe. It's all you need for happiness. Think about it.
Liberace was so flamboyantly, obnoxiously glittery that many of his fans, especially middle-aged women, never seriously considered his real sexuality. For all his preening, prancing, and mincing, his middle-aged and elderly female fans somehow thought of Liberace as a romantic figure.
I sometimes get a little lonesome.
I am going to file a $25 million libel suit against Confidential magazine for the scandalous article that was printed in the current issue.
It was a daring thing to do because the tabloids were correct. Nevertheless, Liberace's victory in a court of law prevented anyone from directly stating that Liberace was in fact flamboyantly, obnoxiously gay. Paid tricks and hustlers moved in and out of his kitsch-filled Las Vegas home like it was a metropolitan bus station. He denied he was queer all of his professional life. Not surprisingly, he also denied to the world that he had AIDS. He died of AIDS-related disease in 1987.
I think I hear somebody coming right now. I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
For all his kitsch and mincing, Liberace was well beloved in the entertainment business and by his fans. His death underlined the devastation AIDS was causing inside the entertainment business and outside. Actor Raymond St. Jacques and Brad Davis, choreographer Peter Allen, dancer Rudolph Nureyev, Freddie Mercury of Queen, and possibly Danny Kaye. The exact facts of his death were kept quiet, but medical professionals at the time noted that these symptoms corresponded to those of AIDS. Like Liberace, Danny Kaye was adored by some fans. Others thought his double talk and Catskill Mountain humor was a bit cutesy-wootsy.
I found a bow and arrow and I learned to shoot. I found a little horn, I learned to toot. Now I can shoot and toot. Ain't I cute?
Subsequent to the deaths of both Danny Kaye and Laurence Olivier, reports have surfaced alleging a homosexual affair between the greatest actor of England and one of America's most beloved comics. But Laurence Olivier, known as Larry to his friends and to his peers in the House of Parliament, remained most discreet all his life. All three of Olivier's wives were the soul of discretion. Discretion about one's sexual taste has always been a tradition in British theater and films, from the lowest extras to the most exalted performers.
Well, do you sleep with girls or don't you?
Sally, you don't ask questions like that.
I do.
The wild world of rock and roll overlapped that of Hollywood and produced such glittery icons as Elton John, who took a glitter page out of Liberace's press book, but announced publicly his bisexuality. Elton John's other problems with weight, alcohol, and drugs, plus changing music styles, caused him to fade from the scene in the 80s. But like Liberace, he may be back for a whole new generation. David Bowie, in his Ziggy Stardust days, gloried in ambisexuality, but as he approached middle age, his wild behavior became far more sedate, and a new crop of teenagers considered him passé. Boy George, the ambisexual falsetto, whose 15 minutes of fame lasted slightly longer than that of Tiny Tim, also succumbed to the temptation of drugs and alcohol. His career had began inauspiciously in the underground stations in London, where he hired out his mouth and lips. Later, he learned he could make more money singing. This class distinction between lower-class street hustlers and Johns and upper-crust homosexuals was underlined by the life and career of Lawrence Harvey, who dropped his working-class gay friendships when he became a star.
You can ride herd and a bunch of poor, ignorant girls, but not me. No, ma'am, you can't tell me what to do.
Like the straight character he played in the classic film Room at the Top in 1959, Lawrence Harvey didn't let personal feelings get in the way of his career. His former gay friends called him piss elegant. Unlike Harvey, Montgomery Clift was born to the purple, or at least his mother assumed he was, the illegitimate offspring of northern money and southern refinement. She instilled in her son Montgomery a sensitivity and a neurotic sense of selfishness. The great love of his life was Libby Holman, a singer, actress, and heiress to the Reynolds Tobacco fortune. She had been accused of murdering her bisexual 20-year-old husband in the 1930s, but was acquitted. Clift swung both ways, but was evidently very embarrassed about the small size of his penis and talked about it all the time. Occasionally, his taste in friends was questionable. A so-called plastic surgeon named Manfred von Linde supplied cadavers to a homosexual funeral parlor, presumably for gay necrophiles. Maudie's psychiatrist, Dr. William Silverberg, well known in the gay community in Hollywood, seemed to encourage Maudie's drinking, drug-taking, and promiscuous behavior.
I love you because you love me, and because you want me, and because you're warm and soft.
Clift drunkenly crashed his car during the production of an MGM picture called Raintree County. Co-star Elizabeth Taylor helped save his life, but the best plastic surgeons in Hollywood could not give Clift back his former beautiful face. He continued acting in films like Lonely Hearts and Judgment at Nuremberg, but he became increasingly more difficult to deal with. His friend Elizabeth Taylor had put up her own salary as insurance to get Montgomery Clift cast in Reflections in a Golden Eye, a drama about homosexuality in the Army. But Monty backed out, as he had years before, for the part in Sunset Boulevard. He felt the role struck too close to home. Apparently far more secure about his public image as a heterosexual, Marlon Brando took the role. He has fathered several children in and out of wedlock and been married several times. Rumors about Brando's relationship with his roommate Wally Cox in the late 1940s and early 50s continue to surface occasionally, as do rumors of a photograph showing Brando in close proximity to Cox.
You disgust me.
Of all the anti-heroes and rebels from the 1950s, James Dean stands preeminent. Brooding, cute, boyish, and self-centered, He apparently earned his living as a street hustler before getting bit parts on stage and in films like Hill No. 1.
Surely we did not spend 3 years following the Master to return again to our nets. Was it for this the Master sent us out to cure the sick, cast out devils?
Yet I do not understand.
He will enlighten us, Peter. Come, we must spread these good tidings quickly. Rejoice! He has risen as he promised.
According to the generally unreliable Kenneth Anger in Hollywood Babylon, James Dean was known among his kinky friends as the human ashtray. He liked to have people put their cigarettes out in his flesh. He claimed to friends to have been fellated by some of the biggest names in Hollywood, yet it never got him a job. He only appeared in 3 major motion pictures: Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, and Giant, the last released after his death in 1955. Director Elia Kazan, who directed East of Eden, said later, "The main thing about Jimmy is that girls felt, and boys felt about him, and the faggots felt about him, was that you'd want to put your arms around him and protect him and look after him. Don't worry, kid, I'm on your side." It was this sensitivity that made James Dean a superstar after he was dead.
James Dean as Cal, the wildest boy you've ever met.
Your son, Aaron, he's everything that's good.
Say hello to your mother, Aaron.
Say hello to your mother!
You're tearing me apart!
What?
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
Like the 2 actors he emulated the most, Montgomery Clift and Marlon Brando, Jimmy Dean chose his friends for their personality, not for their social status. Sal Mineo co-starred with Jimmy Dean in Rebel Without a Cause and later Giant. Mineo later reflected on his friend Dean, saying, "We weren't lovers, but we could have been." Typecast because of his height and his ethnicity, Mineo compounded his problem by not hiding his sexuality. He was well known in both Hollywood and New York because of his taste for strong, dominant men. One of the notable exceptions appears to have been Rock Hudson. Hudson later said that he had a few dates with Sal. Mineo lived in West Hollywood in his last years. Like San Francisco and Greenwich Village, West Hollywood was known for its liberal attitude toward homosexuality. Mineo brought personal understanding to his staging of the play Fortune in Men's Eyes, about sexual interaction in prison.
I'm the victim of the greatest social disease of our generation.
His kinky tastes figured in the investigation of his murder in 1976, but it proved to be a dead end. His death had been a random act of murder, the ultimate in anonymous fag bashing. Another one of James Dean's close friends was Finnish actress Mila Nurmi, best known to TV audiences as Vampira. She was heterosexual, but extremely liberal and wacky with regard to her choice of friends, the most notorious of which was film director Edward D. Wood Jr. This auteur of bad cinema made such camp classics as Glenn or Glenda, an investigation of transvestism and transsexualism, made in 1952, and the infamous Plan 9 from Outer Space. The delivery of the actor's lines in Plan 9 from Outer Space can best be described as fruity. Starring as the leader of the alien people was a character named Bunny Breckenridge, the flamboyant black sheep of an established American family. Breckenridge made headlines in the 50s by claiming he was going to go to Mexico City to have a sex change. He later gave his name to Gore Vidal's spoof of Hollywood and sex, Myra Breckenridge. It's questionable whether Wood himself was gay, but he most assuredly was a transvestite, as he explains in the highly autobiographical Glenn or Glenda.
Glenn is a transvestite, but he is not a homosexual. Transvestism is the term given by medical science to those persons who desperately wish to wear the clothing of the opposite sex, yet whose sex life in all instances remains quite normal. You, of course, realize that it's predominantly men who design your clothes, your jewelry, your makeup, your hairstyling, your perfume. But life, even though its changes are slow, moves on. This person is a transvestite, a man who is more comfortable wearing girls' clothes. The term transvestite is the name given by medical science to those persons who wear the clothing of the opposite sex. Many a transvestite actually wishes to be the opposite sex. The title of this can only be labeled Behind Locked Doors. Give this man satin undies, a dress, a sweater, and a skirt, or even the lounging outfit he has on, and he's the happiest individual in the world. He can work better, think better, he can play better, and he can be more of a credit to his community and his government because he is happy. These things are his comfort.
My mind's in a muddle, like in a thick fog. I can't make sense to myself sometimes.
In his prime, Wood was a good-looking man who resembled Tyrone Power from certain angles. From other angles, he resembled Alan Young of TV's Mr. Ed. From other angles, Wood resembled Milton Berle. In any case, he took his work very seriously, whether it was writing, acting, or making films. This ponderous seriousness and unique, bizarre visual impressions doomed Wood's films to failure when they were made in the 50s, but rediscovered 20 years later, they were hailed as camp classics.
And something is troubling you.
Yes,
Do I have a right to know?
you have a right to know. But let's just say for the moment that I'm afraid to tell you. I'm afraid I'd lose you.
Nothing could be as bad as all that. I love you and you love me. And nothing in the world can change that.
I hope not. I really hope not.
Glenn, is it another woman?
A mistake's made. A story must be told.
With his wacky subject material and use of stock shots of buffalo, it's no wonder Wood was never a successful mainstream Hollywood director. The closest he came to real Hollywood was working at Universal Pictures in the early 1950s, where he marveled at the vast amount of sand brought into the studio for Abbott and Costello in the Foreign Legion. He also met gigantic Swedish wrestler Tor Johnson, who would become a Wood fixture over the years. According to interviews in the book Nightmare in Ecstasy, Wood told his friends that he would hang out in the Universal costume department with Universal contract player Tony Curtis, who, Wood said, also liked to dress up in drag. Curtis did later appear on screen in drag in Some Like It Hot. Tony Curtis dismissed accusations of his being gay in later years. A lot of people didn't like me, he said, and they figured being homosexual was the worst thing in the world, so that's what they called me. I know who I am and what I am, and I don't care what people say. Another Ed Wood acquaintance, who was a cross-dresser, was hoofer Dan Daly. He began his career in show business as a child in a minstrel show, graduating to vaudeville, burlesque, and finally pictures in the 1940s and 50s.
And when Lady Luck really let herself go, she had the front pages screaming with delight, and the boys in the back room yelling for mercy. Dan Daly, the big man from the West. Lovely Sid Charisse, Dan's lucky charm. And Glamour Town is full of guest stars, too, like Jerry Colonna, Lena Horne, Frankie Lane. My lucky star.
Interestingly enough, rumors of Daly's cross-dressing never seemed to harm whatever appeal he had at the box office. His on-screen image was as an eccentric leading man, rather like Ray Bolger. And the fact that Daly might like to dress up like women just added to that eccentric image. To the surprise of no one in the entertainment business, Daly appeared in drag and did a Charleston in the musical It's Always Fair Weather. Daly's comparatively happy life as a cross-dresser contrasts greatly with that of Albert Decker. Albert Decker, best known as a screen villain in films like Dr. Cyclops, was a cross-dressing drag queen in private life. As he entered his 60s, the good character parts started to become few and far between. He appeared with Montgomery Clift in Suddenly Last Summer, and later in The Wild Bunch, his last feature. Decker enjoyed kinky sex. One of his kinks was being hung. Absence of oxygen to the lungs supposedly makes an orgasm more intense. However, in 1968, it appears that he took this kink a little too far. He was found dressed in women's lingerie, choked to death. He had written words like fairy and cocksucker on his body. Why is drag apparently so popular in the entertainment world? Actually, it's no more so than in any other line of business, except that in entertainment, the drag can occasionally indulge themselves. It's a self-perpetuating situation. Entertainers have always been considered a little eccentric by outsiders, and therefore eccentrics often gravitate into entertainment as performers, designers, dancers, or whatever. Of course, not all transvestites or gay artistes are as flamboyant as the spoofy couple in the French drag comedy La Cage aux Folles. And the charming thing about the film's success in America was audiences liked it not in spite of the fact that the two leads were gay, but because of it.
Tu n'as même pas remarqué que j'avais maigri. Tu me regardes comme un pot au feu, plus comme une reine de théâtre. J'ai envie de mourir.
Alors, tu meurs ou tu cuisines?
J'ai préféré prendre l'échelle.
Mais c'est dangereux, vous pouviez tomber.
Mais je suis tombé. Ah, tu piques.
Oh bah qu'est-ce que c'est que ces poils?
Eh ben...
T'avais pas de poils quand je t'ai connu.
Ah, bien sûr que non, je l'ai rasé pour la scène.
Chaque fois que tu te retrouves seul avec cette bonne femme, c'est la même chose.
Écoute, en 20 ans, c'est juste la deuxième fois.
Oh, je suis furieuse de vous connaître, hein? Le papa de la vilaine qui va me voler mon grand-fils. Oh.
Albin.
Je me rends très bien compte que je suis ridicule. Alors je me suis dit qu'il n'y a qu'un seul endroit où personne n'est plus ridicule. Et j'y vais.
Moi, j'en peux plus. Je vais la tuer. Tiens-la bien, cette biscotte, bien fermement dans ta menotte. Avec mesure et décision.
Oui.
Une main de fer dans un gâteau.
D'accord, oui.
Essaye maintenant. C'est
Bon, alors.
la biscotte de l'homme.
D'accord.
Allez, on passe un peu difficile.
Un peu de confiture?
Oui, prends la cuillère.
Je prends la petite cuillère.
Oui, c'est ça. Non, 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 così, non. Qu'est-ce que c'est, ça? On dirait un thermomètre que tu secoues. Excuse-moi, c'est simplement une cuillère. Tu la tiens, sans trembler.
D'accord, oui.
Vu,
Sans
oui.
trembler. Bah oui. Oh.
Ah.
J'ai cassé ma biscotte.
Mais enfin, madame.
Quoi, madame? Quoi, madame?
Cross-dressing is not unknown by women either. Marlene Dietrich, widely rumored to be, at the very least, bisexual, started a trend in female clothing when, in the 30s, she began to wear masculine pants and a suit. There was always a feeling of world-weary decadence about Marlene Dietrich, beginning with her early days, starring in The Blue Angel with Emil Jannings. The face, voice, and legs of Marlene Dietrich seemed eternal, even 45 years later when she starred opposite David Bowie in
Just a Gigolo. I'm the head of a regiment of sorts, the Gigolos.
In Hollywood, in her heyday, Marlene's coterie of female friends was known as the Sewing Circle. The outward appearance a star chooses to give is the impression they want to make, and mannish clothing means power. Few women exuded or wielded more power than Joan Crawford in her heyday, a determined woman who let nothing stand in the way of stardom. She used sex like a man, for power. In her early days as Lucille Lesueur, she posed for sapphic still photos, and later, when she had a snootful, would make a pass at anything that moved. In the 40s, Natalie Schaefer, later to co-star in Gilligan's Island, rejected a pass from Joan Crawford because her husband, Louis Calhoun, was ill and she had to go home. When Schaefer showed up for work the next day, her dressing room trailer had been moved to the other side of the studio lot, by orders of Joan Crawford. She chose her public men for their charm and looks, not for their sexual chemistry. Cesar Romero and George Nader were two of her favorite dance partners. But Joan's pendulum swung primarily one way, and her star ascension coincided with that of the greatest king of movies, Clark Gable. Long after Gable was gone, Crawford verified a rumor that had been floating around Hollywood for years. It seems that in his very early days, Clark Gable had a brief affair with a notoriously gay actor and later designer, Billy Haynes. Notorious is the correct word, as Haynes and his friends were arrested for indecent exposure on the California beach. Word of Gable's involvement with Haynes spread through the gay community in Hollywood. This caused major problems when Gable played in Gone with the Wind under director George Cukor. The liver-lipped, closeted George Cukor was discreet and never alluded to the Haynes story to Gable on the set. Nevertheless, Gable was very uncomfortable with anyone around him knowing what he thought was a shameful secret. Cukor was known as a woman's director, more at home with emotional tenderness than wide-scale action-adventure. Gable worried that Cukor would emphasize Scarlett O'Hara over Rhett Butler. That was the excuse given when Cukor was fired and replaced by Clark Gable's friend, the rough-and-tumble Victor Fleming.
You turned me out while you chased Ashley Wilkes, while you dreamed of Ashley Wilkes. This is one night you're not turning me out.
Gone with the Wind, first picture to win 10 separate Academy Awards, is now bigger, greater, more awe-inspiring than ever before.
Those were the so-called golden years of Hollywood, when men and women kept secrets that they felt could destroy their career. When gossip mongers like Hedda Hopper and the repugnant Luella Parsons kept little black books on naughty people. When puerile-minded poofters like J. Edgar Hoover wasted millions in government funds for the purpose of personal voyeurism. Hoover himself was a classic closet case. He lived with his mother until she died, and thereafter with the handsome young Clyde Tolson, yet never wavered in his self-loathing quest to wipe out deviants and perverts from Hollywood. The nicest irony is that years after Hoover's death, his lover Clyde Tolson was played by Dan Daly. Gay life in Hollywood is really no more or less happy or pathetic or tragic or erotic than any other form of expression. And ultimately, a star's sex habits are not what matters. What counts is what you see on the screen.
It's what they call, I guess it's as good a phrase as any, star quality.
So many things it can do. This magic quality that makes a star. It can bring tears to the eyes and laughter to the lips. But most of all, and above all, joy to the heart. I'm Rock Hudson. You'll continue your help, won't you? For the love of mankind. Thank you.